I have always been a skeptic. I never believed in the paranormal, ghosts, or legends. I believed in facts, numbers, and a good paycheck. So, when I saw the job listing for an overnight meteorological observer in a remote part of northern Alaska, I did not hesitate. The pay was ridiculous, almost triple what a normal data entry job would pay, and all I had to do was monitor equipment, log weather patterns, and stay awake from sunset to sunrise. I needed the money badly. I had student loans piling up and rent that was 3 months past due. To me, this job was a miracle. It was a 6-month contract, living completely alone in a heavily reinforced cabin miles away from the nearest town. Every 2 weeks, a helicopter would drop off fresh supplies. Other than that, it would just be me, the snow, and the monitors. When I arrived, the man I was replacing looked terrible. He was pale, his eyes were bloodshot, and he had dark, heavy bags under them. He looked like he had not slept in weeks. He did not even introduce himself. He just grabbed his duffel bag, handed me a single sheet of laminated paper, and walked past me toward the waiting helicopter. Before he got in, he stopped, looked back at me, and said, "Read the rules. Do not skip any of them. And whatever you do, do not try to be brave." Before I could ask what he meant, the helicopter took off, leaving me completely alone in the freezing, silent wilderness. I went inside the cabin. It was surprisingly cozy. There was a small kitchen, a comfortable bed, a massive wall of computer monitors tracking wind speeds and barometric pressure, and a heavy-duty communications radio. The front door was solid steel with 3 separate heavy deadbolts. I set my bags down and looked at the laminated piece of paper the man had given me. It was titled, "Standard Operating Procedures for Night Watch." I expected it to be a list of how to reboot the servers or when to check the wind gauges. Instead, what I read made my stomach drop. Rule number 1. By 7 p.m., all 3 deadbolts on the front door must be locked. Under no circumstances should you unlock them before 6 a.m., regardless of what you hear outside. Rule number 2. At exactly 3:33 a.m., the main communications radio will begin to broadcast heavy static. Turn the volume down, but do not turn the radio off. If you hear a voice speaking through the static, put on your noise-canceling headphones immediately and face the wall until 3:40 a.m. Rule number 3. If the outside temperature gauges ever drop by more than 20 degrees in less than 60 seconds, immediately close the heavy steel blinds on all the windows. Do not look outside. If you are too late and you see something standing in the snow, do not make eye contact. Slowly back away and hide in the bathroom until the temperature returns to normal. Rule number 4. You are entirely alone out here. If you hear someone knocking on the door claiming to be lost, claiming to be a hiker, or claiming to be the supply pilot, it is not them. Do not answer. I laughed out loud. I literally laughed in the empty cabin. I figured this was a prank. The veteran hazing the new guy. It was a classic joke to play on someone who was about to spend 6 months isolated in the freezing dark. I tossed the paper onto the desk, unpacked my clothes, and settled in for my first night. The first 2 nights were perfectly normal. I logged the data, drank too much coffee, and watched movies on my laptop. The locks were secured, mostly because of the freezing wind and the threat of polar bears. The radio remained quiet. The temperature fluctuated normally. By the morning of my 3rd day, I had completely forgotten about the laminated list of rules. But the 3rd night was different. The sun went down around 6:45 p.m., plunging the snowy landscape into complete, pitch-black darkness. I went about my normal routine. I locked the deadbolts, made some dinner, and sat down in front of the monitors. At about 2:15 a.m., I noticed something strange on the primary weather monitor. The outside temperature was -5 degrees. Within the span of 10 seconds, it dropped to -10. 10 seconds later, it was -15. 5 seconds after that, it plummeted to -27. A sudden drop of 22 degrees in under 30 seconds. My heart skipped a beat as my eyes darted to the laminated list on the desk. Rule number 3. If the temperature drops by more than 20 degrees in less than 60 seconds, close the blinds. Do not look outside. My rational brain fought against my rising panic. It was just a sensor glitch. It had to be. Equipment fails all the time in extreme cold. But the sheer speed of the drop was unnatural. I stood up from my chair and walked toward the main window. My hand reached out to grab the edge of the heavy steel blinds, ready to pull them shut. But human curiosity is a dangerous thing. I couldn't help it. I paused, just for a second, and peeked through the glass into the freezing darkness. At first, I saw nothing but swirling snow. But then, as my eyes adjusted, I saw it. About 50 feet away from the cabin, standing under the dim glow of the exterior floodlight, was a figure. It was incredibly tall, easily over 7 feet, and impossibly thin. It wasn't wearing a winter coat. In fact, it didn't look like it was wearing clothes at all. Its skin was pale gray, blending in with the snow, and its arms hung down past its knees. It was standing perfectly still, facing the cabin. Facing my window. Panic seized my chest. I couldn't breathe. I remembered the second part of the rule, do not make eye contact. I immediately slammed my eyes shut, gripped the handles of the steel blinds, and yanked them down. The heavy metal slammed into place, locking with a loud click. I stumbled backward, tripping over my chair and falling to the floor. I scrambled into the bathroom, locked the door, and sat in the bathtub, hugging my knees to my chest. I sat there shaking for over an hour, listening to the absolute silence of the cabin. Eventually, I gathered the courage to check my phone. It was 3:30 a.m. I crept out of the bathroom and walked slowly back to the main desk. The temperature on the monitor had returned to a normal -6 degrees. The relief washed over me so strongly that my knees almost gave out. It was gone. I sat back down in my chair, taking deep breaths, trying to convince myself that my mind had played tricks on me. That the isolation was getting to me. Then, the digital clock on the desk flipped to 3:33 a.m. Immediately, the large communications radio on the shelf sparked to life. A loud, abrasive static filled the room. It was deafening. Rule number 2 flashed into my mind, turn the volume down, but do not turn it off. Put on headphones if you hear a voice. My hands were shaking as I reached for the volume dial and turned it down to a low hum. I stared at the radio, paralyzed. 10 seconds passed. 20 seconds. Just static. Then, the static broke. Hello, a voice crackled through the speaker. I froze. It wasn't just any voice. It wasn't a stranger. It was my voice. Hello? Is anyone there? Please, it's so cold out here. I need help. Let me in. The voice on the radio was an exact replica of my own. It had my cadence, my tone, my slight stutter when I got nervous. It was flawlessly me. I know you're in there, my own voice pleaded through the speaker. I forgot my keys. Please open the door. I'm freezing to death. Tears streamed down my face. I grabbed the noise-canceling headphones off the desk, jammed them over my ears, and spun my chair around to face the blank wall. I squeezed my eyes shut and hummed to myself, trying to drown out the horrible reality of what was happening. I sat facing that wall, too terrified to even look at the clock, until the muscles in my back cramped. When I finally took the headphones off and turned around, the radio was silent. The clock read 4:15 a.m. I survived the night. When the sun finally peeked over the horizon at 8 a.m., I unlocked the deadbolts and stepped outside. The freezing morning air hit my face, grounding me in reality. I walked around to the front of the window where I had seen the tall, gray figure. There were no footprints in the snow. Nothing. It was completely untouched. I went back inside and spent the entire day searching the cabin. I dug through every drawer, every file cabinet, and every digital folder on the computer, looking for answers. Eventually, I found a hidden encrypted folder left by previous watchers. The files contained journal entries spanning back nearly a decade. Every single person who had worked this job had experienced the same things. The temperature drops. The mimicking voices on the radio. The tall figures in the dark. But one journal entry, written 3 years ago by a man named Arthur, made my blood run cold. Arthur wrote, "It's trying to learn our routines. It doesn't just want to scare us. It's studying how we react." I noticed that the entity outside doesn't leave footprints because it's not physically walking on the snow. It's projecting an image to draw us out. The real danger isn't what's standing under the floodlight. The real danger is what's waiting right beside the front door while you're distracted by the window. I realized how close I had come. If I had gone to the door to check the locks while looking at the creature in the snow, it would have been right there. That night, my fourth night, I did not wait for the temperature to drop. At 5 p.m., I locked the deadbolts. I closed the heavy steel blinds on every single window in the cabin. I turned the radio down to its lowest setting, put my headphones around my neck so they were ready, and sat in the center of the room. I stayed completely alert. I refused to let my guard down. At 1 a.m., the power in the cabin suddenly cut out. The hum of the heaters stopped. The monitors went black. The only light was the small, battery-powered emergency lantern on my desk. In the dead silence of the powerless cabin, I heard it. Footsteps on the wooden porch outside. Slowly, deliberately, walking up to the heavy steel front door. Knock. 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 I stopped breathing. "Hey," a muffled voice called from the other side of the heavy steel door. "Hey, it's the supply pilot. My chopper went down a few miles back. My radio is dead. It's freezing out here, man. You gotta let me in." Rule number 4, do not answer the door, no matter who they claim to be. I sat in my chair, perfectly still in the dim light of the lantern. "Come on, man, I know you're in there," the voice said. It sounded incredibly convincing. It sounded exactly like the gruff, older pilot who had dropped me off. I could hear his teeth chattering. I could hear him shivering against the metal door. "I'm going to lose my fingers out here. Please unlock the door." A part of my brain screamed at me that it was really him. What if his helicopter actually crashed? What if I was sitting here, warm inside, while a real human being froze to death on my porch? The guilt started to claw at my chest. I stood up and took one step toward the door. "Thank God," the voice outside said. "I can hear you moving. Just slide the bolts back. Quick, before the wind picks up." I stopped. My blood turned to ice. The door was solid, reinforced steel, 3 inches thick, designed to withstand hurricane-force blizzards and polar bear attacks. There was absolutely no way someone standing outside in a howling windstorm could hear me take a single footstep in socks on a carpeted floor. It was listening to my heartbeat. I slowly backed away from the door. I didn't say a word. I walked backward until I hit the desk, put my headphones on, and waited for the sun to rise. The voice outside begged for an hour. Then, it started screaming in anger. Then, it started slamming against the steel door with a force that shook the entire cabin. It didn't sound like a man anymore. It sounded like a massive, wild animal trying to tear the metal off its hinges. I squeezed my eyes shut and kept my headphones on until my watch alarm went off at 7 a.m. When I finally took the headphones off, the sun was shining brightly through the cracks in the blinds. The power had miraculously turned back on. The cabin was warm. The monitors were humming. I walked to the radio and pressed the emergency broadcast button. I contacted the mainland station. I told them I was having a severe medical emergency and needed immediate evacuation. I didn't care about the money anymore. I didn't care about the breach of contract. I just needed to leave. The actual supply helicopter arrived 3 hours later. The pilot, the real pilot, looked at me, saw the pale, terrified expression on my face, and didn't ask any questions. He just nodded, helped me throw my bags in the back, and we took off. I am back in the city now. I found a normal job working in a crowded, well-lit office building. I live in an apartment complex surrounded by hundreds of other people. I feel safe. I feel normal. But I am writing this to you right now because I need to get it off my chest. I need to warn people. If you ever see a job offering incredible money for an isolated night shift, do not take it. Some rules are written in blood, and some places belong to things that we do not understand. I thought I had escaped it. I thought coming back to the city meant I was safe. But last night, I woke up in my apartment at exactly 3:33 a.m. My television had turned itself on. It was playing loud, abrasive white static. And beneath the sound of the static, faintly, I heard my own voice whispering from the speakers. "I found you," it said.